morning, everyone. I am flying solo today. I think, as people have known if they've watched the podcast, Carla lives in Delaware, of all places. I am in the Bronx. It's not actually Thursday, it's Saturday, and I'm on location at the Hip Hop Ed Conference, which I believe is the first time they've had this in person since 2019. Might look like an everyday classroom, but it's only because that's the only quiet space I can find in a school full of energy. The hallways, the other classrooms, the auditorium, it's bustling. People are excited to be back. I'm excited to be here because I'm joined by two very special guests, Dr. Dena Simmons, Dr. Meisha Porter, who just got off the stage. You all did a panel presentation to kick us off today. Meisha, my first question is to you as a former chancellor.
Uh-huh.
We're at Bronx Legacy. Tell us about the location of this year's event and why that's important.
Well, one, special to me because Cam Gordon is one of my baby principals who I connected to lead this school. So I'm super excited to be here because I'm excited about the school, the location. But this is the Mott Haven section of the Bronx. There are a lot of things I could tell you about Mott Haven, but today being here is about the beauty of teaching, the beauty of hip hop culture, celebrating the 50th anniversary and celebrating it on a campus that is new, built for this community, built for our children, and what Bronx kids deserve.
Dena, and also Meisha, I've noticed something lately. You have Dena Simmons, my apologies, Meisha Porter, Chris Fremden, Carlos Moreno at the Hip Hop Ed Conference. Something is in the water in the Bronx, right? Like there's something about progressive ed that's coming out of the DNA of this borough in this city. Like what is it?
Well, I think for me is like if you live in the Bronx and if you can live anywhere, because first of all, the Bronx is full of many different languages, many cultures, many realities. You can go to Riverdale and think you're in Connecticut, and you could go to the South Bronx and remember the disparities that exist in the world. A lot of children who grow up in the Bronx, like I did, they stay in their city blocks. Because a lot of times we grow up, we don't even know what we don't have. And so, but when you start to realize what you don't have, you get a certain level of tenacity because you know that you deserve more. Because there's something about being in the Bronx that even though you constantly are told that your borough ain't that, doesn't have this, all these single narratives of catastrophe, there's still so much beauty. And you know that as a child growing up because your parents tell it to you, your families tell it to you, your neighbors tell it to you, because there is such thing as community in the Bronx. You go to a neighborhood and feel a part of a community. And so I think with our upbringing in a place where community has meant something for us, where we have been pushed to the earth and the ground, and as a result listen to the messages. When you are told that you can't, you just get a certain level of tenacity to say, let me prove you wrong. And so a lot of us in the Bronx are just like, and what? Let me show you. So there's a certain level of like, we about to like
let's show you what the Bronx
we about to fight. It may look like we're about to fight all the time, but we are just trying to exist in a space that constantly tries to erase us. And we have to understand, like what Meisha, you were saying on stage earlier, was that the Bronx is mostly Bronx and Latin people. So there's also that layer as well.
No, I mean, the Bronx, you name those, like all of these amazing folk who come out of the Bronx, but who stay in the Bronx, right? And that's something that's super important because nobody shows up for the Bronx but Bronxites, right? Like that's we true. Show up for ourselves, we show up for our people, we show up because we have pride in community, pride in each other, right? Like I love this woman. And so whenever I can be on a stage with her,
or be anywhere.
We have a whole thing. We'll tell you about it. Maybe. But we got a whole thing going on. But I think there is that, right? Like there's a level of pride, love, commitment that we have for this borough, that we have for each other. And like, we want to be the demonstration of excellence, right? Like that single narrative about the Bronx, like we disrupt that in everything that we do. And so I think that's also why like this work is important. Telling our stories is important, and talking about education in this space is important.
And the transformational.
Yes.
So education could be, what I was taught, could be oppressive or it can be transformational.
Well, you talked about Mott Haven and you talked about the Bronx, and some people would argue that the Bronx is the last borough to be gentrified, right? So like, how do you progress in education? How do you progress as a community, but also preserve your identity, what the Bronx is known for?
Well, I don't want the Bronx to be gentrified.
Right, like we
the Bronx folks are like, leave us, don't come. Nah, we good. You can stay. You can stay where you are. We don't want the Bronx. I get mad.
I'm with you. I want to have. What I would love to see is one, like gentrification is not progression, right? Progress in a community is about uplifting that community, right? So it is about how are we giving young people opportunities that when they go off to college or to the workplace, that they know that there's going to be quality housing, quality work, quality opportunities in the community that they love, right? And so for me, like I look at the skyline behind us that has completely transformed, right? Who's that for? Right. How do we create a progressive city where the young people who live in that building can watch that building go up and say, oh, there's a place, they're building that for me. And so I think that is like the spirit of the Bronx, right? Like you got organizations like Nos Quedamos who are like, oh no, we stay, we build, we take, we grow. We're not gonna just let folks come in and take over our communities. And so I think, gentrification is a word that folks use to speak progress into a community, but you actually aren't transforming a community by gentrifying it. You're pushing the problem.
Right. And you're pushing out people. Right. Because once gentrification happens, like damn, there's a Starbucks in the Bronx. So oh man, stuff is going to start getting expensive. They're going to start raising the rent. And so they do these things that are technically legal, right? You know, but then who can afford to pay for the Starbucks coffee, to pay the increased rent? And so they do that. They push. Gentrification has been used as a way to push Black and Latina and immigrant communities out who don't have access to the capital for those increased prices. So what ends up happening is the place is getting better, but it's getting improved, but not for the people who are from the Bronx. Right. So that's why I appreciate the work of Majora Carter. Yep. We were just at her Boogie Down Cafe the other day, and it's sort of like, folks go there and they know that's a place for them.
That's the community's place.
That's the community's place. And what happens, gentrification, there's an us and them. And I always have to put the race layer here, that oftentimes gentrification looks like a white family and a white face. And what those white families do when they show up, they say, let me call the cops on these loud neighbors. And for us, that's like how we gather. Yeah. We're gathering with music. And so now there's a cultural shift that happens with gentrification. And in many ways, colonization that happens, right? And so now you come into my community and now you want me out. You want me to change who I am so that you can be comfortable and your property values look great, but at what cost? And oftentimes it's the cost of the people who built the community.
Well, I told Meisha and Dena before that this is a 12-minute conversation. Right. You cannot talk about gentrification.
No, we know that. We knew it. We knew it. We said we were going to disrupt the joy.
This is going to be a special 90-minute version. Right. All right, let me change the subject. Okay, so we're celebrating today the 50th anniversary or birthday of hip hop in the Bronx. Right. This is a softball question for you, but I want to make sure our audience understands the answer. What does hip hop have to do with education? Why is hip hop ed a single word?
Dena just talked about the way we engage in community. It's also how we learn. I was at the graduation at Lehman College the other day, where Grandmaster Flash was awarded an honorary doctorate of music. But when he talked about what he created, he was the first DJ to spin and scratch a record. And when he talked about what he created, it was scientific. It was intellectual. Yes. There were so many, I had no idea. I'm an educator. I had no idea what he created. And so we created out of this great borough, out of this great community, probably 10 blocks from here, we created a genre of music that has changed the world. 50 years later, changed the world. And that's why hip hop is important, because the people who created hip hop look like me, look like Dena, look like you too, Chris. We talked about this earlier. But they look. Give it up
to the Beastie Boys.
Yes. But they look like us. They look like the kids in this community. And so the importance of hip hop and education and hip hop ed together is young people see their power through hip hop. You think about all of the great hip hop artists that came out of the Bronx, right? From the beginning to some of the most recent. You know, I'm old, so Cardi B is probably most recent for me.
Right.
But still, she graduated from a high school in the Bronx, right? And you can make decisions about her narrative, but her narrative is she's interrupted
Right.
how we see music.
Right.
She has created a whole business of herself.
And
And
her
so-
authenticity.
her authentic self.
Yes,
Yes. Right. And so that's why hip hop ed matters, because when you see a way to express your creativity and your voice and demonstrate learning, it's powerful.
Right. And also in terms of hip hop education, the question could be, why isn't it
Yes.
connected?
Yes.
Right? Why isn't
Enough.
hip hop?
Yeah.
And so for me, when I think about that, it's the same way why right now the anti-CRT movement does not want people to talk about, chattel slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hip hop, just like Blackness, has a negative narrative.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, if you do hip hop, you're going to be, and there are some there's problems in every genre
For sure.
of music, but hip hop, they're like, oh my God, those kids are going to start, doing drugs and alcohol and having sex, right? Because we have this narrative and very single.
And that stuff never
narrative.
happens in the suburbs, I would tell you.
right. So we have this very single narrative of hip hop. So we're like, oh my God, you have to ban this. You can't listen to this. And that happens. I was talking to a DJ in Waterloo, Canada. He says, like, students want to listen to this music, but I can't play it. And I'm like, why? That's what they said they wanted, right? And so there was this hierarchy of the same way we have hierarchy of literature, we have a hierarchy of music. And because hip hop is connected to people in the Bronx who look like Meisha and me, brown skin, black skin, that people are like, have put it on a lower hierarchy. The same way we have a race hierarchy, we have a music hierarchy. And so I think that's part of the reason that we need to think about, there's not a value of it. Like, we have Beethoven in our classrooms. That's what we learn is music. The same way we learn literature is, a bunch of white men who are dead. But there's a literature in hip hop too. You can teach poetry with hip hop. You can teach rhyme with hip hop. You can teach rhythm and iambic pentameter. You can do that all in hip hop. But we've decided that it is so low value that it doesn't deserve a space in education. And I think that is a loss in education.
Yeah, and I think this 50th anniversary is critical for a lot of reasons. When I think about this borough and I think about what it has done for the world, I also think about how has this borough benefited for what it gave to the world. And I think this is an important moment as we, think about this 50th anniversary. What's the world going to give back to the Bronx for what it gave? Right?
That's
like this,
question.
right? You agree?
We gotta
do something.
Yo,
It was born here. It was born here.
We're gonna do it.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
What the world owes us.
The world owes
the
us.
Bronx.
Right, exactly.
There must be some celebration.
There are a lot of celebrations, and I think this is what I worry about. They will be big. The BET Awards about to come on, it's about to be lit. Yankee Stadium is going to do a huge August 11th. But those are moments, right? Like there are going to be a lot of moments this year. I want to know what the investment's going to be as a result of all of those moments, because the other things that happens in our community is people take what we create and extract it and glorify it for their financial benefit and gain. And the creators, right? Our greatest pioneers in hip hop aren't millionaires and billionaires.
Right.
They still live in the community, thankfully, but how are the fathers and mothers of hip hop benefiting from this thing that they've created that's transformed the world, and how is this borough going to benefit? And I think the greatest legacy at the end of this 50th year, and Bronx Community Foundation is ready to answer that.
Right, that's what I was going to say. What do we do with Bronx
But
Community
I think the
Foundation?
greatest answer at the end of this year is to be able to answer that question.
Right. How y'all gonna pay the Bronx back
Mm-hmm.
for everything we did for you? And when I think about everything the Bronx did for the world, you started by asking us by naming people: Chris Emden, Meisha Porter, Carlos Moreno, Dena Simmons, Yolanda City.
Yes, also from the Bronx.
Majora Carter. We could keep naming them, and
The Bronx
the
keeps
Bronx
giving.
keeps giving.
Dr. Edmund Ajapong, who
Edmund
facilitated
Ajapong,
and is leading this day.
Right.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't share. Some folks know when you think of big picture, you think Providence, Rhode Island. We have a space in the Bronx now, and we are thrilled to be part of this community. Meisha, you share some of the
Yes.
space, so we
Yes.
get to work very closely with you.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited that Big Picture is present in the Bronx. And I think it really speaks to the great work that y'all are doing in this borough before you had a home here. And our big brother, Carlos, who is a Bronxite himself.
Right.
What's up, Carlos?
What up, Los?
We love you, Los.
People keep asking me at Hip Hop Ed, where's Carlos?
Where's
So I'm just-
Los?
we'll just put it out there.
All right. Los, happy to see you.
Where are we? 1527.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
right.
We did it.
I am thrilled to have engaged in this conversation with you. Involve me, if you will, in whatever
Yes.
big project comes out of this episode of
This
Hip Hop
episode.
Cafe.
We're looking for you.
We'll put some feelers out.
All right,
Right.
There's
cool.
something here, right?
There's something here.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Meisha and Dena. Let me shift back over here and say, the next time we're back, we will be with Carla, and I am excited that we have two really important conversations with young people coming up. I think you all will be interested to know that some young people who were at the protests in Nashville when the representatives were expelled go to Big Picture Nashville, and they will be on a upcoming episode of Cup of Joy Cafe. So we'll look forward to having you join us not too long from now, but for now, we're out. Thanks very much.